Hello, everyone. Welcome to a Dagger for Sightblinder. May you find shade this day. Adam, how are you?
I'm good. Sarah, how are you?
Good. We just watched episode 5.
Episode 5, man. I will say this one, I the other episode 4 was really good. It was epic, and maybe I
Mhm.
liked it more. I'm not sure, but this
Mhm.
one gave me the biggest set of chills ever on one of the scenes. I was just like,
Ooh.
I was like sitting up straight. I couldn't believe how intense it was. Just really cool. So
Ooh. I want to know what it was now.
excited. Yeah, this one was very, very interesting. So
Mhm.
real quick, guys, before we jump in, just want to do a quick plug, guys. So we have a really cool Discord server that people are discussing the not only the show but the books and how they interact sometimes, and we're getting more and more people on there. There's a lot of good discussion, and we would love it if you wanted to join us. It will be linked in the video description or the show notes, whatever medium you are taking in this content from, whether it's iTunes, YouTube, etc. You can find the link to that. And if you are watching on YouTube, we'd appreciate it. Just if you like what you're listening to, hit that like button, leave a comment for the algorithm. We would really appreciate that. Hit the sub button if you haven't already, and even if you don't ever want to listen to us again, you can just hit the sub button and ignore us. It's totally fine. And if you're listening on iTunes, you could go to YouTube, find our channel, and sub. That would help. But otherwise, leaving a 5-star review on iTunes also really helps us. Hitting the follow button on the Podbean app would also really be nice. And otherwise, I think that's enough of me being selfish. We can actually just jump into this episode. What do you think, Sarah? Did I miss something?
No, I don't think you missed something. I want to jump in because I want to know what you got chills about.
Fine. It won't be for a while. It's toward the end, but okay. So can I just say that this episode, that there's this one thing, there's this trope. I don't know if it's a trope. There's this method of filmmaking or whatever of, so 1 month later.
Yeah, yeah.
And so 1 month later, okay, time has passed, but then what happens though is, like, it's after a very intense scene, there's naturally going to be a lot of interactions, but because it's 1 month later, they have all of the important conversations that they would have been having like on the road. They
Mhm.
have them 1 month later, and it's like, why didn't you guys talk to each other the whole time?
Right.
Like, you had time. You're just like sitting in the saddle literally all day. Like, you even had space. Like, you get privacy. You had access to all the things. And the guy's like, I'm sad. And people are like, why are you sad? He's like, because my Aes Sedai is dead. And I'm like,
It's been a month.
you can still be sad. That's fine. But you
Mhm.
shouldn't be establishing that you're sad right
Mhm.
now.
Right. It's almost like that should have happened, and then they should have had the 1 month later jump.
Right. Or Nynaeve talking to, especially this one, to Moraine. They get
Right.
to the White Tower, and Moraine's like, hey, look, it's been a month. You channeled a month ago. Let's talk about it. You want to talk about it?
Yeah.
Like, it's been a
Yeah.
month. Like, you don't think that Moraine could have like cornered Nynaeve and gotten her to,
Like the next day,
yeah, like, or
immediately after.
for that matter, Leandrin or
Mm-hmm.
anyone.
Mm-hmm.
And
That's
she didn't just spend a full month just like not talking to a single person.
right. Oh,
So,
yeah.
like, I recognize the need. Like, if they need to spend a month of traveling and stuff, it always bugs me. I'm like, you guys should have had this conversation way before now. So,
I think you're allowed to nitpick that.
well, gosh, I was trying to remember. I recently watched a movie that had the exact same mechanic, and for the life of me, I can't remember it. But it bugged me then too. I'm like, it's been a year or something, like a huge amount of time, and you're like just finding out like each other's names.
Uh,
It's like they've been traveling forever with each other, and then, uh, anyways,
yeah.
we can move on from that. It was a
Okay.
frustrating element, but now that I've gotten it out of my system, I find I can discuss
Okay.
and that's probably one of the only parts that I didn't like that much in this episode. What did you think? I'm
Mhm.
dominating the conversation right now, but what were your
Mhm.
thoughts on the month and they're in Tarvalon suddenly?
I know.
At
So
Tarvalon, the first thing that is different
yeah,
from the audiobooks.
Tarvalon.
The audiobooks call it Tarvalon,
Mhm.
and now I'm dominating still. So please tell me.
Okay, so I noticed the 1 month jump and I was like, okay, fine. And everyone's walking along doing whatever they're doing. And I understand the need to jump forward. I didn't really understand the need to do it, just felt like a weird time to me to jump forward because I was like, Perrin and Gwen are still with the Tinkerers a month later. Like that doesn't add up to me. And like I just felt like it made it seem like all of these characters spent a month in, and obviously like they were all moving around and going to Tarvalon.
Yeah,
um
we can call it the right way. We can
right,
pronounce it the correct way.
Tarvalon. And obviously like I know I recognize that they're doing that, but because I'm a very visual person, I didn't see that. I just assume like it's been a month and you've been in the same spot, like you have like a statue, you haven't moved. So I'm like, why are we wasting a month here? Like what were you doing for a month? Like perfect example of it is Matt. Like Matt, his attitude, the way he looks, like you can tell that he looks way more disheveled. He's definitely way more
Mhm.
affected by it. But I'm like, the fact that Rand is like, are you okay? I'm like, it's been a month. Like,
Well, that's another piece of
like,
that of the 1 month issue, like the 1 month mechanic.
but I'm like, and to me, it felt like maybe it was a month in the books. It didn't feel like a month in the books, like whether or not that's intended. But I was like, this is much longer than it needs to be. And I understand, it's
That's what she said.
I walked right into that. I understand that you need to establish the fact that it's going to take a while to get from point A to point B in the world and all this kind of stuff. But it just felt weird. It just felt weird overall. And which was a weird feeling for me in general, because I spent the beginning of the episode crying and then I felt weird. And then I cried a little bit later in the episode as well. But yeah, it was this whole episode felt like a weird
Okay.
emotional roller coaster. Sorry.
No, okay. So you said you cried, and that's totally fine. I at the start you said you spent the start of the episode crying. Did I hear that right?
Yes. Pretty sure it was the start of the episode. Not
Oh,
like the begin, like not like it turned on and I started crying, but like
like what part though?
fairly early on I was crying.
Why?
Um when Stepan was putting the Aes Sedai into
Okay.
her grave.
Yeah, they did a good job of showing how intense
Yeah,
and
I was crying. That was rough.
yeah, I wasn't, but no,
That's
I mean,
okay.
no, and that yeah, I'm fine with it too, actually. But I'm usually okay with not crying, but I will cry if I need to. Actually, I have that skill, that ability.
That ability.
I have that freedom. Maybe we'll call it like that. But okay, so yeah, totally fine. I was just curious because I couldn't remember what. But yeah, that's a really emotional part,
Right.
and then it's a month later.
Right. And then you have Rand and Matt and all of them. And it just felt like it was very jarring for me to have this really serious, also intimate moment. And then a month later.
Sure.
So,
Well, and that too of like you just got done. It just they can't spend too much time on any one moment, and I get that, but
mhm,
it's like okay, Nynaeve just had one of the most intense moments, one of the most important moments she will ever have in her whole life,
right.
and we just learned that she hasn't really talked to anyone apparently,
Yeah.
and they were mostly just like just let her just do her own thing apparently, even though she's she's clearly like one of the most powerful channelers ever, and the Aes Sedai, as represented in episode 4, they
Mhm.
should they should have been like, hey, come join us, like come, like be part of us, like here's a sales pitch, and we don't have to worry about being interrupted by any other Ajas, except for like there's red and green and blue, and
Mhm.
that's all that are represented.
Well, and it also felt really against the character of Moraine in general to do that, because obviously in the book, she's very much like, okay, you've channeled. If you don't get proper training, there's a 75% chance you're going to die. Like,
Right.
we need to get on this kind of thing. And she does that. Like, that's her role. And in this episode, you have her talking to Lan, and she's like, well, like, what does she talk to you about? Like, she eats dinner down at your fire every night.
Right.
Okay. Maybe you can go, like, why are you asking your warder to get information? It just didn't feel like it matched.
Okay, so I'll give, and this goes into book 2 spoilers a tiny bit, but it's at the very
Right.
start of book 2. There is actually precedent for Moraine to kind of avoid someone.
Right.
Like there's I guess I won't even say like who she's ignoring, but there's someone who is intensely frustrated that she is ignoring them at the start of book 2.
Mhm.
And like, so I guess there's precedent for her to kind of remain aloof, but I don't think this is the situation she would remain aloof in.
Yeah. It just seemed to not fit.
Mhm.
But I sound like I didn't enjoy the episode. I actually did enjoy it, but
Well, I think the start was just really jarring.
yeah.
And then once we like got used to the new setting, then we were good. So I mean, good dear Lord, it's so interesting. They go to Tar Valon, and
Mhm.
that never happens in the books.
No.
Like I won't spoil the books, but I remember telling, I can't even, like, there's certain characters who eventually visit Tar Valon for the
Mhm.
first time,
Mhm.
like way later, like book, like what, there's 14 books, book 13,
Right.
one important character doesn't get to Tar Valon until like book 13, and it's like there's at least one other character that never gets to Tar Valon, and like I'm saving like a lot, but there's we get there, and so I don't know, have you seen the maps? There's this really awkward thing about Tar Valon,
No,
and
I haven't seen the maps. I should probably look them up. I didn't know if they would ruin something for me if I did, though. So I just didn't look at anything.
so Tar Valon, it's the seat of women power and
Yeah.
everything, and it's Robert Jordan, the author of this book series, intentionally made it so it's surrounded by rivers. It's an island city, and he intentionally made it to be the shape of female
Got it.
parts. Yeah,
Got it.
and
Following.
it's very awkward, but they've also kept that somewhat true
Mhm.
this time, and it's just very interesting thing to also see the White Tower like as kind of like, I don't know, I've always thought it was very ironic that the height of the pinnacle of women's power and
Mhm.
everything, and they're very powerful, and you just see this huge like phallic object rising into the sky, that's where they live. They choose to live in a place that looks more male than female, kind of,
Right. Interesting. So I
which
did know.
is, it's just like a really minor side note, it doesn't matter. Go ahead.
Mhm. No, I was just gonna say, because I'm only in book 3,
Right.
and they are not in Tar Valon. I feel like they're nowhere near Tar Valon. So when they got there, I was surprised. And then the one thing that I noticed right away is the cinematography that they used for Tar Valon was
Mhm.
drastically different. Like, it's way brighter. It's I don't
Mm.
want to say like cleaner, but it just looks more
Yeah.
enticing. It, like, it doesn't look raggedy. Which I'm not saying that the rest of the scenery looks raggedy, but you can tell that it's kind of like you're going into this high city.
Well, right, but there's no like no one took like really big roads to get there. I guess maybe
No.
we didn't really see what the main road that Moraine and company went in on, but like the little trail that Rand and Matt were going in, and then they see Tarvalin. I'm
Mhm.
like, is this the main road, or is are they just trying to show that like
Which,
society has degenerated to the point that they don't even build roads this close to Tarvalin?
but also like, excuse me, the imagery of Tarvalin and how they made it so that it looked so regal was
Mhm.
really nice to see juxtaposed against Matt. Matt looks like he's been on a bender for a week. Like,
Yeah, yeah, he does.
dude cannot cope.
Well,
And he just looks like a dirtbag.
well, and they make Rand look pretty scruffy too,
Mm-hmm.
but they do, yeah, they very clearly Matt is worse for the wear than Matt or than
Which
Rand.
I totally understand why. It's
Mhm.
just really nice to see against the backdrop of Tarvalin. It's almost like
Yeah,
it makes it pop more.
yeah, you're right. You're right. Yeah, so everyone's approaching Tarvalin,
Yeah. Yeah.
and there's this really so Perrin points out that the Tinker's dogs are just like hunting things and killing them, which I think that's actually a little bit contrary to what they would do in the
Mm-hmm.
books. I'm not sure. There's never really an instance of those dogs actually hunting, but they're just fine with the dogs just ripping into these beasts and stuff. And
I felt
then
a little uncomfortable.
okay, so you're not that far into book 3, I don't think.
No,
Because
like
there's an
chapter
important
5.
so there's a book 3 element
Mhm.
here. So
Okay. Tell me.
okay, so
I gave you permission to spoil me.
um so they I, I'm just trying to think of a way to frame it so that I don't spoil it for anyone else. But in book 3, there's a party. I'll be a little bit vague here, but
Mhm.
there's a party that's returning to Tarvalin. They're going to
Okay.
Tarvalin, and they encounter White Cloaks camping outside of Tarvalin,
Mm-hmm.
who are like kind of hassling them.
Okay.
And this is and it's actually the overall commander of the party that's kind of encamped outside of Tarvalin. That commander is actually Eamon Valda, though they don't actually talk about it. Like they kind of refer to it in the books, but you would never really, that's not something you would pay attention to in your first few readings. I think it's just for me, who I've read those books enough times that now I'm noticing the smaller details. But he's
Right.
the Eamon Vald is the guy who's commanding this like kind of harrying force for the White Cloaks, and in the books they're just there to annoy people. Like they're not, this it's the heart of it's the seat of power for the Aes Sedai, that the Aes Sedai are like, well, we're not going to kill you straight up, like we're just going to, but the White Cloaks in that case do harass the group who's going to Tarvalin.
Mhm.
And so this was an element of book 3, actually.
Hmm.
It's a minor one,
Which,
but
okay, I'm glad you pointed that out, because when I was watching this scene, and obviously it's the Tinkerers and the White Cloaks and everything, I so first of all, immediately I was like, it's a month later and they're still with the Tinkerers. This doesn't add up to me. Like they are not with them that long. And I get it that it's slightly different
mhm.
from the book. But it still was frustrating. Um, and this scene unfolds, and I was like, this doesn't happen. So the fact that it is an element, it just, I haven't experienced it yet, makes me more appreciative of how they're trying to pull in the other books to kind of, I don't want to say speed it along, but I mean, you heard last week I was genuinely concerned that we were only halfway through,
Mhm.
quote unquote book 1, and we were halfway through the first season already. So that's kind of a nice thing to see happening.
Oh, they could go anywhere from here because they're like this. The situation is so weird. So Rand kind of makes that they go into town, Rand and Matt, and Rand is like, "Hey, Tom apparently told me all about this person in Tarvalin,
Mm-hmm.
like this inn," and so it's like in Camelin in the books, where when he and Matt go into Camelin, they go to a place and that's where they meet Loyal.
Yeah.
the Ogier. And oh yeah, how did you? So we finally see Loyal. What did you think?
Yeah.
What were your thoughts?
It wasn't as bad as I expected. I don't know if they did something post show to tweak it after that image. It looked different from the image, but it wasn't drastically different. He was still too short, in my opinion. But it wasn't totally awful. I could kind of get behind it, and I could see what they had. It looked like they had done something to kind of make it more. Because I mean, he did look more Trolloc-esque, in my opinion. I actually just really enjoyed the actor overall for Loyal.
Mhm.
Like as soon as he started speaking and interacting with Rand, I was like, okay, this is like straight out of the book. It was
Oh yeah,
spot on.
he
Like
nailed it. He nailed the
nailed
feeling of
it.
it. Yeah. He's
Yeah,
just like, oh yeah, and you humans have such stupid priorities, or
yeah.
like these mindlessly judgy things that he's like not trying to be judgy, but he's being judgy,
Mhm.
and like humans are just, you know, you're not even annoyed. You're like, oh, okay, Loyal.
Yeah. And he was just like, yeah, like when Rand left him and he's like, oh, humans always are rushing into things without preparing or what. And I was like,
Mhm.
huh, that's such a loyal, like it was
Oh,
just such a
that's
good,
so loyal. Yeah.
uh it honestly like spot on. I think the overall look could have been a little bit better, but
Mhm.
because it was so spot on with his character, I can be forgiving.
Yeah. Yeah. I really liked him,
Yeah.
actually. You're right. The look wasn't that they could have done better, but
Right.
I do think that and you have to think this has been a very impressive show, like, but this is a show and they probably have limited money. Like maybe
Oh,
this is one thing they decided to say, you know what, we don't need all the computer graphics. We'll do some, but we can get away with it. And overall, I think I'm okay with how he looks.
yeah, I didn't hate how he looked. Like I wasn't he didn't I feel bad for saying this. He didn't give me, the circus ringleader vibes that the photo was giving
Hmm.
me. So that would definitely was an improvement, but
Hmm.
yeah. So that was nice. We also saw, since we're still in Tarvalin anyway, and Rand has now left Loyal. We also saw just like a little glimpse of Patton Fane.
Oh, I thought I noticed him actually just
Did
for a
you
sec.
did you notice him? Like it was so brief. If you weren't actually like paying attention to the screen at that moment, you would have missed it.
I was like, I just noticed that he was familiar, and
Yeah.
I thought of Pat and Fane, but I wasn't sure.
Yeah. 100% it was Patton Fane. And he just
Ah,
looked sneaky.
all right,
So
very
mm-hmm,
cool.
mm-hmm.
Nice. I'm glad you said something because I don't think I would have even mentioned that because I wasn't sure that that's who he was. But good. I'm glad you noticed that. Yeah. So Rand wants to bide his time. He's just waiting, and
Mm-hmm.
someone's watching them as they go into the inn. You could like it shows like they're being
Yeah.
watched. There's an angle. They do a good
Yeah.
job of conveying that without showing who it is. And then meanwhile, Perrin and Egwene. Oh, so there's this really powerful moment. Actually, I loved this about the Tinkers
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
because so Eamon Valda apparently has some kind of like photographic memory or something, and he remembers everyone perfectly. And so he sees those two from a distance, and he's like, "Get them!" And the
Mm-hmm.
Tinkers are so cool that they're so brave. Like they're just like, "You can't get them," and he's like, "You can't. You're not going to fight us. What are you going to do?" And they link arms, and they
Yeah.
they they like get beat up for their principles, and they accept it, and they're like, you know what, we're not going to do violence, but we're going to save them if we can. And
Right.
to me that was just so powerful and cool.
Yeah. It was. I was like, okay, so we're making a human chain here. That's fine. Um, and then just watching them not fight back and just slow the white cloaks down was really powerful. um Aram is better in the show than he is in the books.
Oh well, Perrin is just walking there talking to him,
Mm-hmm.
and then Aram's trying to help him, and he gets knocked out, and
Yeah.
and you're like, oh well, I'm glad he didn't even get, like, I was kind of rooting for him, actually. He was,
Right?
and Egwene comes over and is holding Perrin's arm, like they're still friends, and she's like, what are you two talking about? And they're talking, and I liked that. I liked this Aram, actually.
I know. And like I actually, when they were trying to escape, when Aram gets knocked down, I actually gasped. I was like, ugh, like I was
Mhm.
concerned, and I was like, I don't like you, but I like you in the show.
Yeah, I think that's cool. Like, I feel like there's one thing that Robert Jordan kind of does that bugs me sometimes. Sometimes he makes characters too much of something,
Hmm.
and they're just like, they become very two-dimensional, or
Right.
even one-dimensional, of like in the books, Aram is this. He's just this one thing.
Right.
He's not a complex character. He is this, and who knows why he does it, but he does it, and that's how he is. He's a force of nature, and we just have to move along. And like, you don't expect there to be any movement, but in this case, they humanized him. They made him like, and he's already hinted at maybe he's going to leave the traveling people. Maybe he doesn't actually believe in their ideology, but at the same time, he's likable in this
Yeah.
one. Like, he's a human.
Yeah. It's a totally different personality, I feel like.
Yeah, which is great.
So totally. It's fine. It's all good.
It is.
So yeah. Not good that Perrin and Egwene get captured.
Oh, can we just
Like,
mostly focus on their arc, the rest of the,
yeah.
like, to
Yeah, Perrin and
completion?
Egwene.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it was weird.
So there's the two parts. Yeah, there are two parts in this that
Mhm.
have my favorite and my least favorite parts in
Okay.
it, actually.
Then I want to hear it. So they're captured.
Well, first off, I have no idea how he knows Egwene can
Mhm.
channel.
It like
They don't explain it. And that's not even the thing I like the least, but that was inexplicable to me. They didn't explain
right.
it. He's like, I know you can, like, he's willing to do all these horrible things because he somehow knows, but they don't
Mhm.
explain how he knows.
And it was just so weird to me too, because like he was telling her at the point, he's like, when he leaves them after, parents come in and she's, tied down to this chair and parents strapped down to this weird medieval torture device. And he's like, you're either going to channel to save him, which means I'm going to kill you. I'm going to
Mm-hmm.
take your hands, or you're not going to do it and I'm going to kill him. And I'm like, why do you got to kill him though? If she actually can't channel, like why do you got to kill Perrin?
Well, and that also baffled
Like,
me. Like, yeah,
I was like, this seems extremely unnecessary, sir. Like, calm down. What is going on?
and they're so close to Tar Valon, and they're waylaying people and executing them and torturing them. That's, in the books, they hassle people and annoy people. They don't tie people down and chop off their
Chop.
hands and slice them up, and display their rings as trophies and stuff. That's not, it seems incredibly foolish of them, in fact, like impossibly foolish almost. It seems like a plot hole that they would be this close to Tar Valon,
Right.
and actually acting on some of these things that they would do it in other countries and other nations in the books. Like, I don't have any doubt, but this close to Tar Valon, you'd think that they would just be worried about pissing the witches, as they see it, the witches off and getting killed for it.
Right. It was so weird, so uncomfortable. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I I don't like I know, and
Mm-hmm. Good.
that's being tame. Like, I actually despise this guy.
Good. As well you should, because they want you
Trash.
to, hate him, because he's playing the part of the pure evil antagonist.
Right.
There's no redeeming value. He doesn't have a good reason for anything. He's just operating off of his own set of values that we have no idea why. He kind of
Right.
explains it, But it's like, why does he think she can channel?
Yeah, that was weird.
Well, because he couldn't tell that Moraine could channel. Like he can't just like
Mhm.
look, he doesn't have some power that tells him that they
Right.
can channel. So
Right.
somehow he knows. It was very baffling. And can I just say for a minute, the
Mhm.
only character, so they're not afraid to make characters look totally disgusting, like
Right.
in unflattering ways. Like in movies, when you see the good guy being tortured,
Mhm.
he's like kind of dirty or whatever, but he's still defiant and strong, and just, there's some,
Right.
you know or even if they're haggard, they still don't look that bad. And this
Mhm.
one, I was like, I saw Perrin and he took the thing out of his mouth, and I was like, my first reaction, and it's horrible, I was thinking, yuck,
I know.
ew, what's on his lips, like,
Yeah.
please, I don't want to look.
Yeah.
And
It was intense.
yeah, and you already pointed out Matt looks like crap. It's a very
The,
interesting thing. Their aesthetics, I think I'm fine with it. I kind of
mhm.
want him to look more heroic, though. I don't. I want to see Perrin and see him strong. I want to see him strong, even if that's not realistic.
Right. Um, this scene, I know you said least favorite and favorite. This scene though, when Perrin and Egwene are alone in this tent,
Hmm.
I cried. It broke me. Like it was just to hear Perrin basically say like he does not deserve to be alive, and quote unquote confess to Egwene about what actually happened,
Hmm.
was gut wrenching.
Yeah, it was really powerful.
Yeah, and it was really well done. I actually thought for a little bit in that moment, I was like, oh, is she going to channel? Like, is this going to be like the inciting factor for her to, because
Hmm.
she is a lot warmer to Perrin in the show than she is in the book.
Yeah.
Um, that I thought maybe this would be kind of the thing that pushed her over the edge a little bit. But it was it it just killed me. So what did you think about him finally like explaining what actually happened?
Well, I think that I actually liked the way they did this. So a lot of times
Mhm.
I'm usually that guy who says, why can't the characters talk to each other? Why can't they communicate? Like
Yeah.
you could have caused an entire season's worth of mishaps to not happen
Hmm.
if you had just said, hey, I think that this guy is not cool. Or like just one really simple statement of expressing yourself or something. And instead, you, for no reason at all, just keep it inside, and it ruins everything. And so this isn't one of those, though. I think that something that intensely personal to him would need a catalyst of this magnitude.
Oh
He,
yeah.
you can't just say you're traveling with the Tinkers for a month. On day 17, you're not just going to around the fire say, so killed my wife, by the way. He
Like
needed.
some casual dinner conversation.
Right. It's one of those things that if for some reason they kept traveling with the Tinkers, he might not have ever expressed that to anyone.
Right.
If they had for some reason joined them and just traveled around with them, like that might have never come up. But in this intense situation, it
Mhm.
felt very real to me.
Well, and when you factor in exactly that, what you were just saying, where you're traveling for a month with tinkerers, Perrin's also such an internalized character.
Hmm.
He doesn't talk, he keeps everything to himself. That's basically a month of him, over a month, realistically, like if you add in all the time before that, where he's been stewing on this in
Yeah.
solitary, basically. So this now really intense moment is even more powerful because the only person you've had to kind of cope with your thoughts and your feelings is yourself.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. You're right. It was a powerful scene. And actually, ironically, that wasn't the scene that was the best or the worst for me.
Okay.
So the worst part for me was the torture. It seemed
Yeah.
they they just took to, like, they made me feel uncomfortable. And to the point that I was watching it with my wife and she couldn't even watch it. She's just too, and I don't like the blood and stuff. I can handle it a little bit on a show, but it seemed unnecessarily gruesome.
Mhm.
And honestly, the part where they're like scrubbing Egwene and
Yeah,
everything, it felt like kind of rapey a little bit. I mean, it wasn't quite that, but they were
it
violating her
it
at the very
was
least.
it was so callous, like just the way that it was done. And I mean, that's the point. They don't care, right? There's no she clearly is nothing to them.
But well, so that they took the time to dress her in the white,
Hmm.
and they didn't do that to Perrin.
Right. Which is,
So clearly she's something, because she's a channeler for some reason they know.
but which makes me wonder, I can't remember off the top of my head at the start of episode 2, I think it was when we first saw them, was the Aes Sedai that was tied to the, basically,
Yeah, the stake or
the
whatever.
stake. Was she dressed in white as well? I don't remember.
So she was in yellow because we needed to know. She
Right.
was,
Was she in yellow?
yeah, she was wearing yellow because that. Well, I remember having a talk with my friend, with our mutual friend Solo Base 15 from our other game, but he also watches the show. I remember him saying like, well, it was just a yellow, like.
Nice.
Which it made me laugh. I mean, I don't think he's really that callous, but
No.
I just remember that talk, and it was obvious that she was just yellow, or she was wearing yellow, and so.
Well, now I'm even more disturbed then, because what is so special then about Egwene that they need to scrub her, dress her in white, make her, quote unquote presentable?
Oh, maybe
What's gonna happen?
there's too many elements. We have to find out more.
Yeah.
I bet that there's more to come.
Yeah.
There's has to be. I hope there is.
Mm-hmm. But going back to the parent thing, I
Sure.
completely spaced on this because you mentioned the torture.
Mm-hmm.
You saw like his eyes shoot yellow when the first slice of the blade went in, which was interesting.
Pretty cool.
It was pretty cool. I don't know how I feel about how they handled the whole Perrin Wolf brother bit. It was very,
Yeah.
I hesitate to say this. My initial thought, like, and this comes later, so maybe I'm jumping around, but when Perrin, eventually breaks free of this, my initial thought was, this feels very like young adult Twilight-esque. Like, I was like, I don't know how I feel about this. I did not love it, but hopefully it changes.
Yeah. So I think, all right, so they do the torture thing, and Egwene somehow. I feel like we just need more information on the White Cloaks. I feel like there must be some kind of thing that makes it so, like, how are they killing so many Aes Sedai and getting their rings? Because
Right.
in the books, yeah, every once in a while they'll snag one, but for the most part, it's them just kind of waving their fists at the Aes Sedai, and the Aes Sedai watching them, but not really being that concerned. And in this case, he can identify who can use the power. He is chopping their hands off and killing them. And I like that we were just talking about how the hand waving and stuff isn't necessary. Yeah. And then they talked about it in the show. But so how is he not afraid of her powers as well?
Yeah, I don't get it. And also, like,
if Nynaeve had done that, he'd have just died.
But I mean, he's going around and collecting rings, and she obviously doesn't have one. So it's not even that he's hunting Aes Sedai. He's just hunting women that can channel, period, right, regardless of if you're Aes Sedai or not.
Right. Well, but then that's pretty standard White Cloak. Like they just don't want people touching the one source, like the power.
Right. But it's still very like, you know, he's got this persona or whatever you want to call it, where he's clearly the big man on campus, so to speak, and he's showing off these rings he's collected, like his trophies, and he's
Mhm.
threatening to cut off her hands. And it's like, what is so special about Egwene? What is so important here that you're focusing so much tension on her versus any other Aes Sedai?
Mhm. Yeah. I
I have questions.
Well, so one thing I thought of just as we're talking about this, I do wonder so we saw Pat and Fane
Mm-hmm.
and Eamon Valda, gosh, it's not that big of a spoiler, I guess, in the books, but he is a dark friend.
Right.
And so I think he is, anyways. At least he's a very corrupt a-hole. Like he could be a dark, but maybe Pat and Fane was able to identify that somehow.
Right. And he's like leaking information to him.
Could be. He's like, hey, look out for these people or something.
Yeah. Could be.
Well, because the White Cloaks go their own way
Mhm.
in that second episode or whatever, they go their own way. But
Mhm.
then maybe Pat and Fane, who disappeared in the middle of the Trolloc stuff, maybe he ran into them, and like maybe we'll see a little backstory there.
Yeah.
We just need more information on White Cloaks. I feel like they're more complex than, because otherwise they just don't make much sense right now.
Right.
But okay, so there's Eamon Valda is such an interesting. So they're doing their thing, and Egwene eventually she learns apparently how to channel well enough to be precise enough to burn the bond off of Perrin.
Yeah.
Which I guess I'm fine with. They needed something, and then I thought it was so funny. Like Perrin just like gets all big, and he's like, "I'm coming for you, boy," and
Yeah.
and Eamon Valda's like, "Oh no!" Like just runs away like a little. Yeah, it's just really funny, and
it's so weird.
well, because he's like so in control.
Yeah.
And then once he loses control, he just loses all composure. But
Mhm.
it should be noted that Eamon Valda in the movie or in the books, I mean, is actually quite the formidable fighter. Like he's a blade master. He is really good at fighting.
Right. And here he just runs away.
Yeah. Yeah. He's a very unpleasant little
Yeah.
twerp. And I love that and then Perrin was going to take him out. And then Egwene just knifes him.
Right.
And I love this because one of the things that I love in the books is what Egwene eventually becomes, and they set her up perfectly here as someone who will not break. There's a really powerful part. I can't tell you at what point in the book series, but there is a part that it's one of my very favorite arcs in the whole series of where she just decides, no, like I'm not going to break, you're going to break, I'm going to break everything who tries to break. Like it's just really powerful and awesome. And they set it up very nicely in this.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So I mean, yeah, so obviously she's stabbed him. And then the wolves are outside just going nuts.
That's the part that I was just sitting up straight, because it was Perrin just realizing he had this connection with them, and he's like, he's not going to hurt us. He knew it. He talked to him somehow. He communicated. He knew. And she's like, how do you know? And he doesn't respond. But like you said, the yellow eyes and his just, I have chills right now, even just hearing the wolf howls, and the wolves are just overrunning the camp and just tearing up the White Cloaks, and they wanted us to hate them. And so it was a very satisfying, like Valda's dead, everyone's just destroyed and discarded by the wolves. And the thing is, the wolves all have a belief about Perrin, like that kind of like they know who he is because they think a certain thing about him, and in the books at least. And so the fact that they don't have like a translator, a person who can guide him into talking to him, like this is them coming to the rescue of a person who's important to them, I think.
Right.
Like, in a way, he's part of their mythology. They're, if you could call it a religion, I don't know, but like they recognize his intense need, and even
Mhm.
though he doesn't know to tell them about it, they recognize and come running. And it was just very satisfying to see the bunch of d-bags just get ripped
Ugh.
apart.
It was so intense.
Oh, it was.
I mean, it needed to happen, so I'm not mad about it. I hope we see more wolves. I've come to terms with the fact that we are not going to see Elias.
I think that's probably true. Yeah.
Sad.
All right. Sorry to say.
Sad, but it's okay. So hopefully they handle the rest of the story arc well, because it seems to be going well. I think it is.
So they're escaping to Tarvalin,
Mhm.
and then, I mean, there's not much to talk about Rand and company. I guess we could kind of bring them
No.
in when with the Nynaeve part, but okay. So like, kind of backtracking, they come into Tarvalin.
Mhm.
Oh, I'm sorry. Is there anything else about the Nynaeve? Sorry,
Or
about the
about
Perrin and Egwene.
no.
Okay.
No. I was checking my notes. No.
Okay. so moving to Tarvalin.
Hmm.
Well, and I thought it was fun that Rand and Matt were able to watch Logain come in.
Yeah.
And apparently Leandrin got hit in the face with a turnip, which is kind of a funny side note. But the thing that I thought, though, was, I'm glad they just had a backup metal cage. Because he had that really,
these little plot points. Yeah, he did. You're right.
he just like melted the other one,
He
basically.
did.
Disintegrated it. I don't really care. That is just a funny point.
I don't know what I expected to see from Logain here, because he's obviously been gentled at this point.
Right.
And I don't know why. I just kind of expected to see him be more like lifeless almost, and soulless, and just be a shell of himself. And he seemed to be the same. Like, I didn't, if you were to show me this scene of Logain and the scene of Logain before they gentle him, when he's inside that, cage and stuff, he seems to be acting the same.
Like, he doesn't seem to just be on the depth of, he kind of slumped and like dejected, but
not really. Like, a little.
Well, he's not as composed as he was, I guess, when he was being able to channel. But yeah, you're right. Like, he doesn't seem, well, the fact that he's able to laugh at all,
right,
is
well, so then I started to wonder, was he actually laughing, or was that in Matt's head?
Oh gosh, yeah, because then the next scene he's just like laying back.
Yeah. So again, was he actually laughing? And like, because at first I was like, does he see what's going on with Matt? But then I'm like, is this just in Matt's head? Because Matt is going crazy.
Or is it in Rand's head?
At first I was like, oh, maybe it's in Rand's head. But then I actually started to think it's in Matt's head.
Well, yeah, they caused a little bit of question for that. Yeah. And it was very convenient, though, that Moraine and Lan and Nynaeve all broke off before the rest of the procession went in, because Matt and Rand would have recognized those three, but no one else.
Yeah, exactly.
So that was convenient. But yeah, so Moraine has this conversation with Nynaeve, and she's like, here's some advice that I should have offered a month ago. We should have talked. We should have had hours of discussion about this, but here's a little recap of what's going to happen. Just stay in your room and don't talk to anyone. Goodbye.
Yeah. Which is, I don't know about you, but I wouldn't stay in my room after that conversation.
I don't know what you do if I might stay in my room. It just depends on how much I trust Moraine. And I think that because she had a moment with Lan,
right,
even though she's not talking to him that much, though she's talking to him enough so that Lan knows that she feels worried about something, about someone else. Yeah, she just seems to, I don't know, I guess she's kind of what she just wants her people there. And Moraine, did you notice Moraine said, when I find your people, I'll take you to them. She didn't say I'll
Right.
tell you. She didn't
Right.
say, she was a very Aes Sedai answer.
Right. I'll take you there kind of thing.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. So I don't know. I felt like Nynaeve was very, quote unquote on brand for how she reacted to this whole
Mhm.
conversation. It felt like Nynaeve. It felt like the Nynaeve that we've at least seen so far.
Right.
So I guess it was just there for the sake of being like it needed to be said type of thing. But then she she leaves.
Yep. And Leandrin comes and
Mhm.
talks to her, and
Mhm.
I just I wonder if they specifically picked a character with a pointy nose to make her look witch-like, like an actress, because she just looks like an evil witch, frankly. Like if she just needs like a wart on her nose, that's all.
She is very well cast, I will say.
Well, but in the books, she's actually quite pretty. Actually, they always talk about how she's
I don't
very
I
pretty.
I don't mean in the sense of her being pretty or not. I mean in the sense of her being cast and acted in a way that I don't
Yeah,
like her.
she's incredibly unpleasant,
Yeah,
and she just seems she seems like a witch. But
totally.
so here's a disappointing thing.
Mhm.
They didn't show a single other Aes Sedai than we had already seen. They're in the White
Yeah,
Tower, which is the heart of the Aes Sedai power. There's theoretically there should be hundreds of other sisters here, and we don't get a single one that we haven't already seen. We have a strangely intimate conversation between Moraine and Alana where they're on the bed. I was like, are they gonna like hook up a little bit here? I'm not sure.
right.
Or it was like really close, laying on the bed, like
Mhm.
looking at each other. And then we see Leandrin talking to
Nynaeve.
Nynaeve, and we see Moraine do some stuff. And that's it. Those are and we see the background, like the two other Reds who lived through the thing
Right. Right.
at the very start of the show. And that's it.
Yeah.
No other Aes Sedai.
Yeah.
We see warders.
Mhm.
I think I like the warder part. Okay. I think that was pretty fun.
Yeah, the Warders was good. Um yeah, that's a really good point that we don't see any other Aes Sedai though. So, oh
Yeah.
well.
Oh
That's
well.
that's got to be a budgeting thing.
Oh, I'm sure it is. They need to, they can't just have random important character Aes Sedai there as
Right.
just, oh, I see you, and that they probably that person's like, well, I was in this episode, you owe me my $50,000 or whatever they get paid per
Right.
episode.
Right.
But it was still just a little,
Thin.
it just, yeah. So okay, you're interacting with all the other Aes Sedai while you're on the road,
Mhm.
and that's fine. That you don't need other Aes Sedai to just wander in and enter the scene. But then you get to Tarvalon, and there's still no Aes Sedai.
It it just it kind of gives the vibe in a sense of like if you're on the road, is there no one there in Tarvalon when you're not there?
Yeah,
And if you're there, does that mean there's no Aes Sedai elsewhere?
yeah, it's a little frustrating, but
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah.
well,
Well,
because Leandrin wouldn't be. Maybe they've set her up to be the primary Red
mhm.
sister, but she's a relatively new Aes Sedai in the books, at least,
It seems like they've set her up to be the primary.
or at least the focus of our hate, just like Eamon Valda for the White
Yeah,
Cloaks.
exactly.
Yeah,
So,
so uh, the warder part was just really interesting. he was stoic the whole time.
Hmm.
He needed to melt the ring. It had kind of felt like a Gollum thing, actually, just a little bit.
But it was so sad.
It was really sad. I don't mean
Ev-
to.
Everything with him was sad this episode. Like everything with him, I just felt awful.
And then he drugs Lan.
Yeah.
And I was like, whoa, what's going on with Lan?
Right.
He in the book, he would never, his character would never get drunk and pass out on the floor. And then
Right.
it's bright day. And the guy's just killed himself, and it's
Oh,
sad.
so I noticed on that when Lan, came to or what have you, that the block, whatever you want to call it, holding the knives,
Mm-hmm.
um, I noticed that there would be 7,
Mm.
right? So there was one missing, there was only 6. So is that related to the different ajas?
Maybe.
And then did he use the knife that would theoretically be tied to Green?
Huh, that's a good question. I don't know. Well, I thought it was interesting too. They're talking about the Forsaken, and
Mhm.
he has little idols to them. They're almost kind of deified in a
Yeah.
way.
Yeah.
Yeah, very interesting stuff. Yeah, I don't know about the blades. That's a good observation. You were saying 7, and I thought immediately of the 7 Towers of Malkier,
Oh.
which is the place that Lan is presumably
Oh.
he's kind of the ruler of ish. So, but I don't know. It's more likely that it's one of the Aja things. 7 is an important number in this book, though,
Yeah.
or in this
It is
series.
7.
Mhm.
I was like, that's an interesting, because it wasn't like it was missing out of the one side and you would miss it. Like it was very obvious that there was a gap.
Mhm.
So I was like, okay, well, there should be 7 and there are 6.
And then he had killed himself.
Yeah. And his funeral was funeral memorial, whatever you want to call it, was very intense.
So I really liked the part with Lan
Mhm.
just going nuts, like showing a ton of emotion, and
Mhm.
very, very different from how he is in the books. But I feel like in the books I like his character. I like the things he does and says. He ends up being one of the coolest characters, really. But he's also so incredibly stoic about things. In the books, he would have just sat there. Even if he was really sad, he would have just shown off. You wouldn't have even seen a crack in his people die. What do you want from me?
Right.
And in this case, he's just like going so crazy and so feeling so much emotion. And I loved that they showed this really powerful, strong man expressing emotions in a
Mhm.
healthy way.
Right. I was so I didn't really understand why it was Lan specifically that, like, they called on him specifically to,
Mhm.
you know, like let their grief flow type of thing. Is that just because it was Lan talking to him, or like it just felt I was I mean, maybe it's just because he's basically the main one.
So all right. I mean, I'm talking. I quote so much in the books, and I realize that this is a show, and they can do different things. First off,
Mhm.
they never go anywhere near this depth of detail with
Mhm.
warders and their
Okay.
society. Like, never, you never see this level of detail on warders. They talk about them, but they're mostly just they're just the helpers of the Aes Sedai, kind of.
Right.
They're elements, they're important people in some cases, but within the warders, though, Lan is a legend.
Okay.
Like, there was one guy who brags, one of the warders who brags that he beat Lan
Mhm.
like at swords two
Mhm.
out of 7 times, and everyone thought that guy was like legend because he had beat Lan that many times out of 7.
Right. Okay.
So
So it could just be picking him because of that factor.
because he's kind of their unspoken leader in a lot of ways. It
Right.
could be.
And I mean, from a show perspective, from looking at it from, catering to the audience or whatever, I really noticed the connection between Moraine and Lan here.
Mhm.
So I felt like they had, Lan went into this role and is kind of using his grief to kind of channel all of the warder's grief out. And it felt like Moraine was feeling it for him as well.
Well, because their link, their bond, I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah. But you could really see that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're really playing up the link part. I think that's really interesting. And there's actually a very, well, we'll see how it ends up. There's a really interesting interaction between Moraine and Lan in book 2, I think.
Hmm.
Yeah, I think that's the one, because I won't talk about it right here, but it involves their bond.
Yeah.
It's a really intensely personal thing. And so that'll be interesting to see how they're playing up this bond. I also think that he's also good. Just to step back for a tiny second, I think he also was just really close friends with that guy, and maybe he's the one who would mourn the most for him.
Right.
So I thought it was really interesting, though. It was fun to see the more warder things, and how they all kind of, it's a brotherhood kind of. They have their own rituals, and the Aes Sedai aren't there to do anything, but the Aes Sedai can just tell the warders, oh, you can have a hobby, like you can do your own thing as long as I don't need you.
Right.
Like, as long as I don't need you to carry things for me or have threesomes with me, like we're good.
We're good to go. It was, this episode was super emotional. It was taxing. It was emotionally taxing.
Yeah, there was a lot of emotion on all ends, except for the Rand and Matt part, which Nynaeve eventually kind of escapes a little bit, but then she's back at the end. She's back in the White Tower. So, and she hasn't told them that Matt and Rand are in the city. Right.
That's a good point. So
next episode, the next one's called The Flame of Tarvalon, right? Tarvalon.
Yeah.
The Flame of Tarvalon.
Yes. What was this one called? I completely forgot.
I have no idea. I can look.
Just out of curiosity's sake.
This says it's episode 5.
Yeah.
So that's not helpful.
No, that's not helpful at all. But nice try.
I wasn't trying.
Try harder.
I have not yet begun to try.
Please try. I guess I could have looked it up too, but I didn't.
This is being loud. I don't know. We can skip this. Blood calls blood.
Blood calls blood. Huh.
Okay. I mean, there's a lot of blood.
There is a lot of blood. A lot of people dying.
Yeah. I miss Funny Matt. We haven't had Funny Matt since episode 3. We have disheveled Matt.
Matt on a bender.
He only has 3 more episodes.
I know.
And then we don't get to see him again. So far he's actually he's going away from my very favorite, because we just see a disheveled, grumpy Dagger Matt.
Right. We're not seeing the fun, lighthearted Matt that you thought was really well done. So that might be good in terms of, the new actor replacing him.
Sure. I bet he endears us to him again, and then we're just left desolate next episode or next season. Next season, some random guy waltzes in. He's like, "Hey, I'm Matt." And it's not believable at all. It's
not Matt. Oh yeah. So I guess we'll find out what happens next week.
So where would you rate this one? We have 5 now.
Ooh.
Let's do a really quick ranking, and then let's call it good.
Okay. So I think episode 4 is still better.
I
than
think
this
I
one.
liked
I
4
think,
best so
yeah, like
far.
I would put 4 at the top, then
Okay.
this one,
Okay.
then I would probably, I really enjoyed the first episode, so I would probably put the first one third.
Okay.
Then I would go, yeah. So I would go 4, 5, 1, 2, 3. I didn't love 3.
I could tell when we talked about it. It seemed like that was the one you were least enthusiastic about.
I didn't love it.
It's fine. You don't have to love it.
Yeah.
Just FYI.
Thank you. Thanks. How would you order them?
I would say, so I would go 4 as the top, and then 5. So it's nice that 4 and 5 are my favorite. Like it's a good trend, because the first 3, I would actually just put them in a different, like I'd almost rate them just in a lower category. Like 4 and 5
Right.
are just considerably better than 1, 2, and 3. But if we're just ranking the 5, though, it would be 4, then 5, then 3, then 2, then 1.
Interesting.
Because 3 was interesting because they all split up and they all had their own adventures, and Matt was fun, and we got to meet Tom, and we got to do all this stuff. We got to see all these different elements of the characters. Nynaeve, did she show up? Yeah, I think, yeah, she did show up, and everything. And then in episode 2, you see the Emmons Fielders actually, we can actually focus on more things. In episode 1, we see the destruction of Emmons Field, and all the things that I liked about it are just kind of garbage, and has Len's butt. So
all right. Well, our first 2 match. That's fine.
This is fine.
Everything's fine.
Yeah, stick handled that.
Yeah. And our 4th, we both put 2 at the second last.
I guess so. So yeah, I'm looking forward to the next one, though. I feel like the series has picked up. We're in Tarvalon. We know they're going to go through a Waygate at some point. That's probably why they picked up Loyal.
Yeah, I think maybe they go through a Waygate next episode, or maybe at the end. I don't know. I'm trying to think of that picture that we saw.
All right, so right now we don't have a mission. Everyone's goal was to get to Tarvalon,
and they're now there.
Right. So there are some loose ends that they can pick up. Like they can get rid of the dagger potentially. And but for the most part, they're gonna have to even the White Cloak menace is gone. Like the wolves ate it.
Well, I actually think that maybe the dagger thing will happen next episode, because having Pat and Fane there in for a few seconds is enough to be like, he's in the same town. He can come and snag that dagger now.
Yeah. But I think they're gonna have to find a new quest. I think they're gonna go on some kind of a mission. We have to save something. We have to retrieve something. We have to accomplish a thing that requires us to not just sit on our hands in Tarvalon for the rest of the season.
Right. I agree.
In the phallus chamber, whatever, the big.
I mean, Perrin and Egwene are gonna have to meet up with them too at some point.
Yeah, but they're just gonna run to Tarvalon, and there's no one chasing them now, really.
Right. Theoretically.
I mean, we'll see. That they've done a good job so far, and it is totally different, but I'm okay with it, actually. And they made sure that we knew that Caemlyn still existed. Because that's where the Amyrlin seat is.
Right. That makes sense.
She's also not just sitting like that guy had said.
Like it sounds like she would be.
Right. Like she's not just a chair.
Right.
Look at that chair. It's like an Amyrlin colored. I don't know. But okay. Is there anything else you want to share?
I don't think so. I think that is it.
Cool.
I'm double checking my notes. Yeah, I'm good.
Okay, so just do our sign off and call it good, right?
Yeah, you can do it.
Okay.
I did the intro.
I know you did. I'm just trying to remember what it is. So, guys, thank you all so much for watching today. It was a lot of fun. We're going to have the regular podcast out at the regular time on it's usually a Wednesday.
Yeah.
That we put it out, which will be right before episode 6 is released. So thank you for watching, and may you always find water and shade.